A word is spoken. Lightning strikes. For young Billy Batson, the adventure of a lifetime begins. In Captain Marvel, the world's mightiest mortal is born. Shazam! Say the word. Feel the power. No, not Kazam. Wrong universe.
I said Shazam.
Oh, I thought you said Kazam.
No, I wouldn't do that.
I just did. Shazam! Say the word. Feel the power. Yo, Joe. It's ready. We're ready to begin this Unspoken Issues podcast. That's right. I'm Jesse Starcher. Good evening, everybody. Good morning, whenever you're listening to us here. And I am with my pals, my buddies, Dean Compton.
Buenos noches.
There he is. Darry Weight sitting up there. He's withholding himself from just unleashing all the hell that he has contained for Jerry Ordway.
You thought I hate Scott Lobdell.
I want to be very upfront. I was very excited we read this because I love Captain Marvel, and I've always meant to go back and actually read this, not just random scenes from the run. So I was very thankful for that opportunity. And as with most things that I claim to hate, I enjoyed it way more than I thought I was going to. So I do appreciate the opportunity.
What I love about doing podcasts with you guys is that I am woefully ignorant on the golden age. And as I've listened to and edited a lot of podcasts that we've been on, I've realized that you guys have a font of knowledge. Is that right? Am I using the right phrase? Okay.
F-O-N-T, yeah.
All right.
I call Dean a font all the time. Whisper into his ear.
Yeah, so I get to learn from you guys. And I know Captain Marvel's been around for quite a while. Dean, you threw this on the schedule. Standard question. Any particular reason why?
Because I love Captain Marvel. Because it's funny, everybody knows my favorite character is the Punisher, but Captain Marvel is my third favorite character. I love this guy. Second is Green Arrow, in case anyone was asking. It can fluctuate a little after that, but those are the big three for sure. And I've just always loved this idea that a kid says a magic word and gets unbelievable power. I wrote about the 70s Shazam over at Paul O'Connor's Longbox Graveyard, a really fantastic Bronze Age blog. And in many ways, I like Captain Marvel for the same reasons I like the Punisher. As weird as that sounds, I grew up in an abusive household, and both of them were outlets as I got in my teen years, where I'm like, man, if you're just the Punisher, take care of this. But then I wanted the Punisher to come take care of it, but I could be Captain Marvel. If I just stumbled upon the right syllables, then I would be Captain Compton, and I would be taking out the people who are abusing me, which I never happened. I try. I say a bunch of weird syllables all the time, but I've yet to stumble across the proper ones. But when I do, watch out, capitalism.
Look out.
And so I'm just always this idea, and then you get in, you study the history of it, and you find out that Captain Marvel arguably was bigger than Superman. He was literally sold more copies than Superman at one time, was a part of the cultural lexicon. Barry and Mesh, Gomer Pyle uses Shazam as his catchphrase. The Beatles dropped Captain Marvel in a song. So they don't drop Superman in a song. They'll save that for Donovan. But the Beatles dropped Captain Marvel. So you learn more and more. And the more I learned, the more I loved the comic books themselves, the more I loved the history of it. And you cannot talk about the history of comic books without always coming back to Captain Marvel. I think that it's a shame that DC has rarely ever gotten it, quote unquote, right. I think they're doing a really good job right now with Mark Waid's Shazam title. And I think that another time they really got it right was when Jerry Ordway was at the reins of the 1990s. He painted and wrote this one, and later on he'll write and paint covers for the ongoing. And I think he pencils some issues too. But they got it right in the 90s. I feel like he found his own place. He found he and his surrounding Mary Marvel, Captain Marvel Jr., Sivana, they finally had their own niche and really didn't for a long time since then. And it was really great to go back and read this and see how that all got started for Billy Batson in the 90s. Not to say he never did anything in the 90s prior. He was part of the Eclipso crossover and guest starred some, but here's where it really takes off for him, I think. I like Superhero High, too. I don't know if anybody remembers this cartoon.
No.
But it was a cartoon around 81 or 82. And it had the Shazam family as part of it. Superhero High was kind of like there was these knockoff super teen looking guy. And then Captain Marvel and the Marvel family had their own part. And I remember liking that a lot, too.
Wow. I had no idea that existed, dude.
I know. That's what I do.
Yeah.
What I do. You want history and you want facts? I'm here. And whether we're talking about the history of Captain Marvel or we talk about the history of British imperialism, which will come up in this thing, I'm ready for it.
Oh, man. All right, Darry, follow that up. What's your experience with Captain Marvel?
The first time I ever saw the character was in the aforementioned Mark Waid Kingdom Come miniseries, and I had no idea who he was, but I know he beat the hell out of Superman, and that's always a good way to get my attention. Over the years, I've become obsessed with him because he's published by DC, he's owned by DC, but he's not a DC character. As Dean mentioned, he was a competitor. He was from the world of Fawcett Comics. He started his career by beating the hell out of Superman. What I always tell people about him is he's Superman 2.0. He came out almost immediately after Superman. He's 100% an imitator. That's baked into the first issue, but he changes just enough where he didn't have to change again. You know, Superman's gone through a lot of evolution in his 85 years, some good, some bad. Still an incredibly popular character. Captain Marvel and many of his supporting characters, they came out the gate and they haven't had to change. They're like Bugs Bunny. They really are. I think he personified the entire genre in a lot of ways. And I always tell people, and I'm sure I stole this from someone much smarter than me, but he's the closest the Golden Age had to a Peter Parker Spider-Man. This idea where he's a little kid and a full-grown person at the same time. Peter puts on the mask, and he's Spider-Man. All his problems go away. He's not a little kid. Doesn't have to worry about not having a driver's license. It's the same thing here. Billy's homeless. He's got nothing in the world, but he stays kind no matter what, and he's rewarded by God, basically, to protect his fellow man. And he's done that without fail for 84 years.
So. They both also were kids that were working for mass media in a way that they might not should have been at the age that they were.
Right.
You know, there's another parallel there.
Yeah.
His radio and Peter Parker takes pictures. It tracks.
There's a ton of overlap. It's not a new story, but Captain Marvel was out of publication in the 60s when the Marvel age occurred. New fans wouldn't have been super familiar with him and Shazam and all the other ones. So who knows? I know Jack Kirby went on record numerous times as saying he loved Captain Marvel. He borrowed from him all the time. In the early days, Captain America is a little scrawny kid who gets magic from an old wise man, and he turns into a perfect superhero. He doesn't necessarily turn back. Thor is the same way, right? Thor takes an action, and a bolt of lightning turns him into a god. It's this idea
because the God decreed it.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone
really goes hand in hand.
Yeah, and everyone is very open with putting their spin on it. But when it comes back to Captain Marvel, his original creators were Bill Parker and C.C. Beck, but the guy most known for defining him is Otto Binder. And these guys were just good. They were masters of what they were doing.
And Otto Binder will take a lot of these same concepts and then get them into Superman, having a family. He's going to bring Supergirl, which and you ask him about, he said, we had Mary Marvel and that was successful. So why not have Supergirl?
I'm a huge fan of the Golden Age Superman, the social crusader, basically Dean with superpowers, right? He fights for social equality. He doesn't fight a lot of
I don't have a gun, but yeah, sure.
He doesn't need a gun. He could.
I don't care if I need one or not. It looks cool.
But my point is that one of the reasons he eventually becomes all-knowing and all-powerful and all good and all these other things is because in a lot of ways, once Captain Marvel is canceled for reasons we won't go into now, they see what ideas worked and they bring it over to the Man of Tomorrow, right? Dean mentioned Supergirl is pretty much Mary Marvel. Jimmy Olsen's pretty much Talkie Tawny, and it goes down the list. Lex Luthor from the Golden Age is a redheaded bootlegging gangster who sometimes invents things, and then suddenly he literally is just Dr. Sivana. It's a straight swipe.
He was more mystical in the Golden Age too. He had that Power Stone or whatever it was.
Yeah, he wasn't
was not necessarily an evil scientist per se.
No, and in all fairness to the late great Jerry Siegel, there was the character of the Ultra Humanite.
I was about to mention the Ultra Humanite filled that role for Superman at the time.
But you can even drill down deeper. I'm a huge Captain Marvel fan. How much of the Lieutenant Marvels is in the Legion of Superheroes? How much of Mr. Mind is in Brainiac? It's all here. The Captain Marvel had one of the first big crossovers, the Monster Society.
25-parter Monster Society of Evil story that was not rivaled in the Golden Age as far as complexity.
No, wow. And it ends with, the Monster Society of Evil just straight up includes Hitler and the Emperor of Japan and Mussolini and whoever we were fighting in real life.
Yeah, Tojo and Savannah and Dr. Savannah.
Yeah.
What's the guy's name?
Ibac and Sabak and Mr. Adam and all these great villains that they would come up for him. It was good stuff. Captain Marvel's one of my favorite characters. He continues to be that way today, and I love him. I love the movie, too. I think I'm the only person that routinely says that the Shazam movie starring Zachary Levi is my favorite CEU film. I really do love it.
The first one's fine. The second one's not very good.
Well, the second one just doesn't have a good antagonist. It blows my mind, first of all. There are 3 Shazam films. That's insane to me. And the second, the Black Adam film doesn't feature the characters of Captain Marvel or Shazam. And the second one doesn't
The Rock
have Adam. Like, I don't understand why that.
Because The Rock.
It's crazy.
That's the answer. Because he thought Captain Marvel was too silly for him to mess with.
I don't understand why there just wasn't a movie. And again, give The Rock top billing. Superhero movies always used to give the antagonist top billing. They're the more important aspect of the story, right? Jack Nicholson, Gene Hackman, all these guys. It's like, give The Rock top billing if that's what he wants. But Zachary Levi doesn't care. And then it's at least let them fight. That's the point. The villains in the second one are, so boring.
As far as myself and Captain Marvel, it's very sparse. I think you mentioned, oh my goodness, the Alex Ross thing.
Kingdom Come.
Thank you. My goodness. I don't know why I blanked on that. I clearly recall reading that and going, oh, yeah, this guy is something that's not to be messed with. But I didn't really read a whole lot of DC in the 90s either. And I remember seeing ads, or at least the Power of Shazam, sitting on the shelves. But I wasn't invested in the character enough to go and pick up any issues. So, yeah, this is the first time I've ever read The Power of Shazam. I didn't know what we were getting here. And Dean, did you touch on why Ordway is doing this origin? We're coming out. Lay it out there for me. Why did Ordway feel, okay, hey, I've got to bring this character and give an origin, somewhat of an origin here?
That's a pretty good question. They did the reboot in '87 that Roy Thomas and I want to say Tom Mandrake were the primary creative drivers of. And it was well received and people liked it, but then it just kind of languished. And then they put him in Justice League. And then again, he's just pretty much guest starring. So I think that because when does this drop? 1993?
I think it's 5. I want to say 5, maybe 4.
There's a hardcover that comes out first, and then there's a softcover reprint.
I want to say date is January 11th, 1994. So
94, yeah. Okay. So yeah, so I guess between the 7 years between that miniseries, they needed to get the character reimplanted in the universe. And I know part of it was not just, we need a good origin for him or whatever, but how the fuck does this work? We already have Superman. We have Gotham City. We have this. You had to, I think it was a concerted effort on Jerry Ordway's part to not just reboot and revitalize the character and reintroduce him on a slightly grander stage, but also to fit him into the DC universe in surroundings that would reflect the character more than just slapping him in somewhere. Before we came on, Jerry was saying that this is kind of ultimate Captain Marvel. And I can see that. To me, when I look at it, as weird as this sounds, it's the Shazam Adventures. They were able to take that animated feel to an extent and plop it into the DC universe and make Fawcett City obviously none of the DC universe is real, but you couldn't take the animated Gotham and put it into the DC universe as it existed in '94 and it feel it belonged. But somehow this was a Captain Marvel cartoon that they put into the DC universe and it would belong in a greater sense. And I think that is why Jerry Ordway was going for it. I think that's what the higher ups wanted.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Yeah, this is early '94. I'm certain that, just like I said, Captain Marvel Shazam is not registering on my radar, and it's probably a situation, just like I said, the higher ups are, maybe we could try and get some eyes on this, and giving Ordway the opportunity to.
You got to consider at one point he sold almost 2 million copies a month. And I know that would have been approximately 40 years before this, but there had to be some juice left in this if they could just figure out the right way to squeeze it.
Right.
Yeah, but there's one thing, I agree with you guys, but there's also one big thing that is his biggest stumbling block, which is he missed the Silver Age, right? He missed it.
It's true.
Every other character that was in the Golden Age and is still in publication was able to get some reboot, some more energy, some more oil for the wheels. He missed that. When he returns in the 70s, in the thing you're talking about, Roy the Boy has this great idea that no one's ever done before of just saying, well, he skipped all that.
Right, they put, suspendium or whatever.
Oh, God.
Well, no, that's the 72 stuff. That's not him. Roy Thomas did something different. I don't remember.
All right.
That's what I was going to say. It's part of the problem, too, though, is when he appears, when they license him, because DC doesn't buy Captain Marvel and that whole gang for a while. They license him until around 81 or 82 before they finally outright buy them from Fawcett. It's hokey. In the article I wrote for Long Walk's Graveyard, I mentioned that I decided to kind of immerse myself in it, right? And I'm going to listen to while I read this and write this, I'm going to listen to some of the top albums from that year. And the top album of that year was Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. And in this fucking reboot, he's in Suspendium, and they're Sunny Sunshine, the world's nicest kid. And they don't even really, they just kind of lay it out there. Even C.C. Beck draws it, and it looks great. And I think he should have drawn it no matter what. But there's almost no updating. There's no refurbishing at that time. And you're right. I think that did hurt him. When he did finally show up, it was whatever. And when he does finally hit a cultural touchstone, it has nothing to do with that comic, which would have been canceled, except Filmation licensed it for TV, and in the mid-70s, that was a hit. So that's what people wind up associated with it. So what does anybody from the 90s, if you've seen Captain Marvel, you saw his superpowers figure, you saw Superhero High like I did, you read that hokey comic book, or you saw the hokey Filmation. So yeah, there was no... You're right. He's hit this whole era where everybody else, if they weren't created then, they got a tune-up, and he didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, and the result is most people just think of him as this weird, out of touch. Not only is he a little kid, but he's a little kid who sounds like one of the little rascals or something. He gets frozen. And the problem is that every time they try to bring him back, they always focus on the weird things. But one of the things about the movie is I feel the movie shares a lot of DNA with what we read tonight, kind of focused on the things that are important. It's like, what's really important about this? He's an orphan, and he's been chosen because he didn't let that ruin himself. And the power's basically unlimited. It's like he can do whatever the story calls for. There's a story, he turns the planet spinning in the other direction to win a bet with someone. He's as powerful in Wiz Comics #2 as Superman is ever going to get. But he uses it the way a little kid would, which is what Dean mentioned before. So this is interesting. And the reason I said it was very similar to Ultimate is he tries to mature it a little bit. There's no sex, there's no violence, but there's definitely the indication that this version of Captain Marvel lives in a world that has consequences. And one of the things that I really admire about it, and it's very much a product of its times, but even then it's set in the 40s. It's got all this retrofuturism to it. It still feels something that wouldn't have been current. I always go back to, I really do think if someone handed me this when it came out, when I was a little kid, obsessed with the image and everything, I'd be like, what is this? And then sitting here 30 years later, I can easily say he's one of my favorite characters.
Another interesting thing about it, I've been doing this press thing. There was a lot of hype for this.
Really?
So Wizard 23, there was a big article about Captain Marvel. A 6-page, what happened to him, the lawsuits between DC and Fawcett, where he went, the licensing, etc. And then it mentioned that the graphic novel was coming out. In Wizard 29, there's a little sidebar about it. And in Wizard 30, there's a sidebar about it and another article about it. Hero Illustrated #2 had a sidebar about it that said, hey, it's coming, don't worry. And then in #8, it put it #3 on the hot books for the month. And that's interesting, the fandom for this period of time when Captain Marvel was, you knew he was there, but he wasn't part of it. People were kind of clamoring for it. If you go back to the 60s, the APAs and the alter egos and the fanzines, they wanted Captain Marvel too. If you read All in Color for a Dime, it reprints Captain Marvel books. You know, we want Captain Marvel back. We want Captain Marvel back. And it's interesting. I think there is an intrinsic and inherent desire among the vast supermajority of superhero fans to get this fantasy where the kid gets the powers, but he's still nice. And that's why the Jeff Johns shit didn't work, because nobody wants to read Billy Batson and be a little shit. Who gives a crap? I don't want that. I don't. I can read about the real world, about lots of little shits who get whatever they want, okay? That's fine. What I want is someone to be rewarded for going through the pains of being pure at heart.
Well said. I want to ask you guys, see if you can guess, okay? Jerry Ordway. So this is January 94. This drops. You guys want to take a guess at what Ordway was penciling?
I think that's his last issue of Adventures of Superman.
Okay.
Around that time, Adventures of Superman 500 or whatever drops around the same time, or he's coming off Superman.
April of 93 is Superman number 500.
That's one of his last issues of Superman.
What's he go to right after?
Wildstar's probably what he was working on about this time.
Yes, indeed. It's Wildstar, Sky Zero, and so he's penciling that, and he inks Phantom Force #1.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. And then Power of Shazam hardcover hits. So
now, apparently, he'd been working on this Power of Shazam graphic novel for a long time, because most of these articles are like, we've been hearing about it. It's coming.
Wow. Well, and there's a lot of respect for Ordway and what he's done in the business, what he's done with
Darry.
Well, I was going to work my way there. Hey, let's talk about the story here. I've got the synopsis ready. In the heart of the desert, Mr. Savannah's team, led by the Batson couple, which is Lynn and Charlie, I believe, and a man by the name of Theo Adam, have unearthed the secrets of the Temple of Ramses II. The trio stumbled upon a hidden passage venturing deeper into the ancient tomb. A fateful touch on the wall's markings renders Adam unconscious, but Lynn and Charlie pressed on, uncovering hints of a powerful figure named Shazam. Reuniting, Adam's greed surfaced as he tried to claim a jeweled necklace. In the ensuing chaos, he attacked Charlie and Lynn. Lynn manages to escape with a scarab from the necklace, but tragically, Adam betrays and murders Charlie, leaving Lynn to fend for herself at the hotel. On the way out, Theo slices their guide Saeed's neck. At first, I was like, that dude's dead. But then follows Lynn to the hotel, ends up killing Lynn and her nanny, I guess. Somebody was watching the kid, watching Mary. Mary, who is now dealing with the fact that her mom is lying, bleeding on the ground. Theo Adams like, come with me, kid. And that's kind of where we end that. Now in Fawcett City, young Billy Batson's life takes a turn when a mysterious man leads him to an enchanted subway. There, Billy meets the wizard Shazam, who bestows upon him the power to transform into Captain Marvel. Confused and angry, Billy at first struggles to accept his new role, even resorting to violence. Hey, I don't want this. The wizard reveals some interesting facts, though, to Billy about his parents' murder, which fuels Billy's inner turmoil, but he soon realizes that he now has the powers to go and find the person that did it. Meanwhile, Mr. Savannah's dark schemes continue. Egyptian authorities with the barely surviving Saeed show up at his door and identifying that, hey, two of your employees are now dead. Both of them appear to be murdered, and we're looking for Theo Adam. Where's he at? He's the prime suspect in this murder. Savannah kind of plays it off. They leave, but he goes downstairs, and sure enough, he's hiding Theo Adam in the basement. And he explains, hey, look, you bumbled something up. These guys are here. They're looking for you. I didn't exactly want you to murder anybody.
At least no one who would be noticed.
You're also jeopardizing my exhibit for the Fawcett Fair.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of those things. I like this book. I love it. But this is one of the things I was like, what's Savannah getting out of all this again? I could never quite piece it together. I don't know if y'all could or not, but maybe I was missing a page or something, but it did not come together for me.
I have, over the weekend, I was editing the Protectors episode that we had, and there was a lot of talk about the World's Fair. And that's kind of how important is this fair? And now we've got another thing here. Where's the Fawcett Fair? And there's apparently, it's all it is a freaking exhibit. He sent them down there to take pictures of the tomb of Ramses, and I think he was going to do an exact duplicate at the fair. So it's okay. What are we doing here? So
why does Theo Adam have to kill anybody? That's the thing. Like, this seemed like a lot.
Well, treasure was involved, obviously. Huh? Yes. Savannah's frustrated. You're jeopardizing the Fawcett Fair in my exhibit, for crying out loud. Billy, though, now Captain Marvel, finds and actually confronts Theo Adam and his men as they attempt to sabotage the WHIZ radio station. Now, to just kind of pull that together, folks, what was going to happen was Saeed, who can't talk, he got sliced.
He can't talk, so he's going to go do a radio interview.
So he's going to go do this radio interview.
Now, there is someone with him who can talk.
Yes, the authorities are going to do this radio interview, and they're going to listen. They're laying it all out there for the WHIZ listeners, just how shady this Mr. Savannah is. All right, so the WHIZ radio station has to go down. So sure enough, Theo Adam and his thugs go to plant a bomb and blow up the radio tower. And lo and behold, Billy Batson happens upon him. They throw him off of the building. He turns into Shazam mid-fall, comes up there.
He turns into Captain Marvel. He says Shazam.
Thank you. He turns into Captain Marvel after yelling Shazam, and then flies up there, and he's about to give them their comeuppance. So he doesn't realize this is the first time that he's actually kind of let loose. He's starting to realize his strength. He's definitely a lot stronger. At one point, I think he throws a car into a building.
Yes, he does. That's the cover of Wiz Comics #2. That's the very first appearance of Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And more to the point, it's a response to the cover of Action Comics #1, where Superman is merely lifting the car. Captain Marvel is throwing it right into a goddamn wall.
So... all right.
He's just, I love Joe Shuster, but Captain Marvel's got the sweet half cape.
Yeah.
He's got the buttons. He's got the lightning logo. Yeah. He doesn't have to worry about the glasses and stuff. His secret identity is well kept. He's got a great look to him. He really does.
You don't have to worry that there won't be any steak just because there's so much sizzle here. It's all
Oh, man. So Theo Adam, he escapes, but he watches. At first, when he sees Captain Marvel, he believes that it's Charlie. He believed Charlie had survived somehow the attack, but because he looks so much like his dad. Adam is still alive, and his thugs have been arrested.
God, that one is so amazing. Oh, I'm an old man. I just do dynamite jobs. The superhero got me. He's like on the ground. He's great. Poor guy.
Billy's quests for answers lead him back to the wizard. He was shaken at how strong and how powerful he was. He was like, look, I can't do this. I need you to take these powers away. But the wizard is like, look, you can do it. You need to continue to do what you're doing so you can uncover the truth about your parents' death. Now, Theo Adam, driven by his dark ambitions, transforms into Black Adam after grabbing a scarab from Mr. Savannah's trophy room.
He'd be really mad about you not calling him Doctor, right?
Well, the thing is that he is Mr. Savannah throughout this whole book. And I know, believe me, I thought the same thing. I was
all right then, Jesse.
I'm sharing my screen right now.
No matter what they call him, he's Dr. Savannah.
And the thing is that I'm ignorant enough to Shazam, Captain Marvel, but I knew that he was Dr. Savannah throughout this whole thing, and I didn't understand why. And I had to stop myself from calling him Dr. Savannah through this synopsis because he's Mr. Savannah in this book. At no point is he a doctor, apparently. So I don't know. What's that? Ordway, get him on the phone. What's he doing? So Savannah.
Do you think Jerry Ordway would agree to tag with Jason Aaron against me?
Is it handicapped, or who are you bringing in as a tag team partner?
It's me and Darry.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Well, yeah. You could. Ordway's probably up there in years. You could probably take him pretty good. I don't know about Aaron though. I haven't seen. I don't know.
I would grab him by his beard and judo throw him to hell.
All right then.
I would beat the grits off of him.
Oh,
That's some Southern stuff right
Southerner. There. We can do that for charity, and that would be it.
So anyway, Adam grabs the scarab and he puts 2 and 2 together, and he's holy crap, Shazam. And he turns into Black Adam. Black Adam has now made his appearance in this book. Captain Marvel shows up, and they begin to just start fighting all over the place. Black Adam gets the idea. He's like, I've got to go figure out where this Billy Batson guy lays his head. It's got to be right by the WHIZ building. And that's where he goes and he finds Talkie Tawny. And he finds, poor Billy Batson, by the way, who is a homeless kid, got threw out by his uncle. But anyway, this is what Black Adam does. He goes, he finds where Billy Batson has laid his head, finds his stuff, starts going through it. And then I think that's where we start to get the battle. Because sure enough, Captain Marvel shows up and they start fighting. And they fight and they fight and they fight. People are going through buildings. One girl's trying to get, I don't know, some kind of racy cover shoot. And
here's that they stumble upon Betty Page.
Yeah, that's Betty Page.
Oh, okay. All right. So
photo shoot there.
They're flying all over the city. They're fighting. And sure enough, where do they end up? They end up at the site of the fair, the Fawcett City Fair. And inside, the fair's not going on, by the way. They're getting prepared, but inside, duplicate.
No corn dog stands were injured during this ruckus.
That is correct. A bunch of people who were putting together this exhibit get the hell out while Black Adam and Captain Marvel decide to throw down. I-beams are flying, and finally, Captain Marvel. Now, when I say I-beams, iron I-beams, I'm not talking about Superman.
No, these guys don't have I-beams.
They do not have I-beams. How's that? Support beams are flying all over the place.
Right. The fancy Lego Technics.
There you go. So Black Adam, he's trying to get the better of Captain Marvel, and he's not able to. Finally, it's at one point where he wants to claim Captain Marvel's power for himself. But in a moment of clarity and strength, Captain Marvel reaches up, grabs the scarab, and strips Adam of his powers. Also, taking him straight, I think he takes him straight up into the sky.
Right.
And he says, I'm not going to kill you. But that's when the wizard Shazam steps in and says, how about I strike him with a lightning bolt and erase his memory? And that's exactly what happens. Boom, lightning bolt hits, erases his memory.
Take away his voice.
Oh, his voice gets taken away too.
Yeah. I
didn't know that. Okay. All right. Well, at that point, Captain Marvel's like, I am taking you to the authorities, takes him down to the police. He can't remember. Obviously, he can't remember anything. He's not going to be able to talk. That is the end of Black Adam as far as the power of Shazam goes. Now, in the aftermath, Billy seeks the Wizard's counsel once more. Yearning to relinquish his powers, he felt his mission has been accomplished. There sits the mysterious person that guided him to the subway in the first place, and it is revealed that that is actually the ghost of Billy's father, Charlie Batson.
C.C. Batson.
Mm-hmm. Now, he has a conversation with him, and Billy is given a new purpose. As Charlie's spirit urges Billy to embrace these powers and also go find his sister Mary, as she is out there somewhere, and it would be nice for Billy to find her. And, hey, you got powers now. Go ahead and use those to your advantage. Do it. So resolved to
Black Adam found where you lived in 18 seconds. Fly for like half a minute. You'll find your sister.
Resolved to continue his journey as Captain Marvel, Billy Batson vows to honor his family's legacy, protect the innocent, and fight against the forces of evil. And that is where we end the power of Shazam. All right.
Well done.
Dean, one of the things that you threw to us there last week, I think it was, you're like, hey, this is 90-some pages, but it's a quick read. And I will say that, at first I was kind of intimidated. Well, geez, here we go. But it wasn't. Yeah, you're right. This is a quick read. This is something that you can get through.
There's like 25 pages of fighting.
Yeah, that ain't hard.
No. It's beautiful. A lot of work put into this. It's not easy to paint. This is almost 100 painted pages. There's a reason there aren't many painted books out there. It's because it's hard, even though it looks great. And you can tell the work I put into this.
Yeah, for sure. Darry, I'll start with you here, man. What'd you think of the book? The Ultimate Captain Marvel, Ultimate Shazam.
I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it very much. It's very well drawn. It holds together as a story, as a coherent story, and there's a lot of love. There's so much love. He clearly loves this character at a time when maybe not everyone else did, and you can see it. Every page is some of the best work he's ever done. I will say there were a bunch of specific things that I appreciated. Back in the 40s, Captain Marvel was one of the first, he may have actually been the first character to get his own movie serial back then. And I like that the title page of this graphic novel refers to that, the Power of Shazam. It's all in black and white. And again, this is really supposed to evoke that go into the cinema if you were our grandparents. Feel what's going to happen next. So I like it probably worked against him in the sense that I don't know who the target audience for this was in the mid 90s, but reading it now with hindsight, I kind of appreciate it. You know, and it even says as DC Comics presents Captain Marvel in the Power of Shazam. It's like, you know, Jerry clearly in his head had that this is something that should be playing on a cinema screen. So,
I think the target audience was the Superman books, even before the death of Superman, were selling 6 figures a month. I think they thought that they could get those people to read Captain. If they Superman, surely this isn't too far away. And I think it was also supposed to be slightly more kid-friendly once it gets into the ongoing. But then they give it the $1.75 price point, which I always thought was weird. Because I'm like, this should be a book kind of for kids, because Captain Marvel is one of the few superheroes that can really work comically and superhero-y. Then you put it in your next higher up price point is weird. But I think that was the target audience, to answer your question. Mostly people who were buying Superman at the time. Mike Carlin winds up editing this book. He was the group Superman editor then.
Oh, does he? Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, yeah. All right. Mike Carlin comes on. All right. Good. The other thing I really liked, so this is a change that Ordway made. It hadn't been canon before, but I thought it was a pretty good thing. So he establishes over the course of this book that when someone says their magic word, Shazam, and they get struck by lightning, it does damage. It starts fires and everything else. Back in the day, some stories would do that, but for the most part, it was just like, none of the other characters seemed to notice it. Some of his villains didn't know he was Billy and Captain Marvel, and he would just say a word, and they'd be like, what was that? And they turn around, and Captain Marvel just punch them in the jaw. I kind of like that again. It's like, if you get struck by lightning in an indoor space, there's a lot of energy. There's going to be a lot of discharge and stuff. Superman,
it's magic lightning, so watch out.
Yeah, exactly. That was always a big thing. You mentioned before, what do you do in a world that already has Superman? This version of Superman, the Silver Age version of Superman, what do you do with Captain Marvel? And the answer is, well, if they fight, he's got magic. And Superman has always been no more invulnerable against magic than any other character. So, yeah, it's a good way to set them against each other. And listen, these two have been fighting since the Golden Age. Mad Magazine famously did a version of the story where two thinly veiled knockoffs beat the hell out of each other, and that was the Crisis on Infinite Earths of back in the day. So they've always wanted to fight. And I go back to Kingdom Come. I didn't know how big of a deal it was when they fought when I read it when I was 12, but I know I liked that, and it's only aged so well since then. But what I was going to say is going along with this idea that the powers now have consequences. He's not just like Bugs Bunny. He is responsible for the wizard's death. And I thought that was really interesting because that's not the way it had been before. Jerry goes out of his way to give Billy kind of an original sin when they're meeting for the first time. He has a tantrum as a little kid would, and it results in the old man passing away, as opposed to in the Golden Age where it's more of a preordained thing. A rock falls on him, but he knows it's coming. It's kind of accepting his fate. So I thought that was
slashes it, right?
Yeah. And again, he doesn't do it intentionally. He doesn't murder the guy. He acts out. He's overwhelmed. So I thought that was a good just character evolution. And this whole thing is filled with death and murder and all this stuff you didn't really have back in the day. Not that the old stuff wasn't violent, but again, it's cartoonish. The other thing that I really liked, the thing with Savannah, you guys mentioned this before, that he's like Mr. Savannah. You can't really figure out what he wants from this thing. He already seems to be a wealthy industrialist. Back in the day, he was just a scientist, and he could do whatever he wanted. One story would open with him having built a spaceship, and he goes to another planet, he conquers the other planet, and he brings the newly found armada to Earth, and Captain Marvel just beats the crap out of him for the last couple of pages. He wasn't a business tycoon because he didn't value money or anything. He was the smartest person in the world by far, by leaps and bounds. He could build whatever he wanted. He just wanted to be evil. And he knew Billy was Shazam. That's established early on. He never really cares. He doesn't think anything about trying to murder a child. What I liked here is at the end of this, he's drawn as the most cartoonishly homeless person of all time. Like he's sitting in the alley behind Wiz and he's staring at Captain Marvel and it's, oh, now I really hate you. And I haven't read the ongoing. I know Dean has, but I have to assume that this opens with him being like, I'm going to get my revenge on the big red cheese
Right.
and everything else. And I just thought that was so funny because the original Savannah could get away with anything. And this one's like, oh man, my World's Fair exhibit got wrecked and now I'm homeless and now the world's going to pay. The other thing that threw me for a loop is this characterization of Theo with murdering the parents and all this other stuff. This is all brand new, which isn't bad. Like I like when writers add new things, but here it was, what does this guy want? Did he want Mary Batson? What am I missing? I was very confused as to his motivations. The Scarab was new too. Him using that to turn into Black Adam as opposed to just having the same thing. The real villain of this piece, as we should all have known, is Billy's teacher, who at the end is like, hello, Captain Marvel. I did not, or whatever fake name he gives. It's, I didn't know you were Billy's guardian. You should definitely hang out after class. That was a little weird. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought. In the past, I've mentioned about Jerry Ordway. I guess it always just comes off as very, very generic. That's not a bad thing. I don't think he's a bad creator. I just think that very often he doesn't hit the highs that I want him to. And this is clearly a labor of love. This is clearly getting 100% of him on every page. So I definitely think it's good. I definitely think it's worthwhile. And really, you could strip out all the dialogue and just look at the art. And it's the design work on display here. He's really trying to hit for the fences. So I really do appreciate that.
I feel it hit what it was supposed to with me and what I expected in regards to, okay, it's Captain Marvel. We're going to get sort of an origin story. It feels like a period piece. You mentioned how it's got this retro futurism, almost feels like it's taking place in the 40s, which, yeah, that's kind of what I got too. It doesn't feel like something that's ingrained in the current 90s DC universe at all to me for some reason. And I think that's probably why we're just getting a glimpse at how Captain Marvel came to be and what the further adventures are going to be. Dean, a little bit more about the ongoing series. Is he going to be running into any of our 90s DC superheroes at all?
No, it's the only comic book that DC ever puts out in the 1990s that doesn't have any guest stars.
Okay. All right. Well, then
that's not true. Yeah, of course.
You could have told me anything.
It actually crosses over with Starman at one point.
Oh, it does. That's a great crossover. Yeah, it crosses over with Starman. Yeah.
Batman guest stars in a really great cover. It's like Dark Knights over Fawcett City, and he's their Plastic Man guest stars in a couple, Superman guest stars. It has a DC 1 million issue. It has a Final Night issue. So yeah, he crosses over a fairly decent amount.
Okay, all right. So then obviously this story is supposed to be taking place in the 90s DC universe.
Yes, it does. Okay. And Fawcett is known in the ongoing. They established that the retro look of Fawcett is something they keep on purpose to attract. Okay. It helps attract tourists and stuff. So they work hard to keep up the Art Deco 30s, 40s look there.
Got it.
I don't know how that translates to everybody having a 57 Chevy or what the fuck everyone does. And it's fine though. I think that's one of the things that Marvel's really cool because all of their 95% of their places are real and cities are real, except for Lotbury and a couple places. But like New York City is as much a character as anything else. DC works the same way, except you can play with it more. You can be like, oh, well, in this world, Chicago keeps the old 1965 look. Why the fuck would they do that?
Right.
But in a fake world, in a fake city, you could be, okay, so this is what they do in Fawcett City. Great. Which is in Minnesota at this time. Now it's outside of Philadelphia.
Minnesota?
Yeah, it's a Midwestern city.
Oh, man, I did not know that. Okay, yeah, Captain Marvel was always in New York.
I do think it was a way to establish his little corner of the DC universe to make him feel unique while also being able to integrate him greater into that greater tapestry. It's one of the things that makes these shared universes so neat is you believe somehow Batman and the Spectre are both they've hung out and they're both doing important big things in the DC universe.
To kind of piggyback off of the Savannah discussion here, Savannah is the most meek. I don't know why I expected more, but I expected more from Savannah, but man, he just comes off as this meek little weasel type of a guy. And so is that how he was? Darry, you just went off talking about how he was a scientist, this big scientist. Did he always?
He's always weak and Weasley, man.
Okay,
he's physically weak, right? So the whole point of the character is that he's physically weak. He cannot beat Captain Marvel. He cannot, but he's not trying. He's an old man to balance out Billy's youth. And he's miserable, but he's not unaccomplished. He has 4 grown kids.
Yeah.
He's not one of these people who hates the world because it rejected him or anything. He knows he's the smartest person who's ever lived. And he's meek and he's ugly and he's got a dumb name and everything else. But he doesn't care because anything he thinks to create, he's looking for a reason. And then when Captain Marvel shows up and is just trying to be good to everyone, he suddenly has this reason. I'm going to beat this guy. Again, the Lex Superman dynamic will eventually evolve into, where it's, I can do anything. What do I want to do? I want to kill him. Why? Because if I had that power, I would not be nice to everyone. It's the same thing. Savannah can do everything except duplicate the power because the power is magic. He doesn't understand magic in most stories. So it's a little different here where he's more passive, right? He's physically at the whims of Theo. He doesn't have anything else. He can't just build a super weapon or a spaceship or a atom bomb, whatever he needs to deal with him. He doesn't know that Billy and Captain Marvel are the same. So it's a very different dynamic. And in a lot of ways, he's not really Savannah, not in any of the ways that matter. But also, that's not really Black Adam. Black Adam's whole thing in the original story was that he was created to be a big event character. Oh, the whole Marvel family was going to get together, and Bender wanted to give them a foe that would really, they might lose against. He created an evil version of one of them, and that was the Black Adam. But he only had one appearance in the Golden Age. DC's made him a recurring villain, and this idea that he would have a connection to Billy and a normal life to go back to, that's all added. Originally, he was just this, the captain of ancient Egypt, banished to the forest stars, having returned and just hating the wizard, hating this whole thing, and arriving on Earth to see that the wizard was like, well, last time I gave the power to an adult, and you turned out to be a scumbag and a fascist. This time I'm going to give it to a kid. He seems to be pretty good. He's saving with a bunch of other kids. I think they're going to outsmart you. And spoilers for a comic that came out 100 years ago, they do. So it's very different. But again, it's not bad because here you get to really have the Peter Parker dynamic of, okay, Billy, Captain Marvel might save the day. Billy's definitely going to suffer because his parents have already died. Everyone else seems to be against him, and the villains are coming for him personally. This is a world with real stakes. Back in the day, any random issue of Wiz Comics would show Billy homeless or whatever else, but he was never in any real danger. Here, I get the feeling, oh yeah, he's not going to have a great time of it in the ongoing.
Yeah, the old one, and he does get this into the ongoing too, but it's harder. But the old one, he just winds up this kid reporter that everyone loves.
Yeah, he's got a secretary and an office, and people are making appointments with him. It's great because it's dumb, but at the same time, it's if he could fly to the sun and back in the span of a day. So
it's the other side of the fantasy.
Yeah.
Because now you can turn into this adult who can do anything, but you also still get to be a kid who has the power of an adult in a different way.
There's a great fan theory that I read. I don't know who originated it. It's something along the lines of there are a lot of Golden Age Captain Marvel stories that you can read where you can assume Captain Marvel isn't real. That Billy is just, he lived on the street too long and he had a break with reality, and he's imagining a strong man who looks like him dressed as Superman. Because they establish in Wiz Comics #2, Superman is fictional in this world. Right. When the wizard says to him, hey, design what would you look like with that power? He's thinking of Superman, which is why the costume is so similar. And then later on, when he meets Captain Marvel Jr., he's actually a news agent. He's selling comic books. They're comic book nerds. That was established back in the Golden Age.
If Spy Smashers exploit 10 Men Top Secret, that might be what he looked like.
Exactly.
If he had known about Bullet Man at the time, Captain Marvel might have a freaking bullet head.
Yeah.
And you know what? He could join Cyberforce. Because he would have this bullet on his head, right? That would make him cybernetic. And let me tell you something, Jesse. I know you love those guys. Captain Marvel would beat them 6 times every day 5 times on Sunday, he would throw Impact into the sun.
I think he and Velocity would get along very well. I think the speed of Mercury and Velocity, they'd get along.
Oh, yeah.
He'd get along with the little robot kid, too.
Timmy?
Yeah.
Darry, you were working your way with how I think we were working on the fantasy, and we were talking about how Captain Marvel is maybe a figment of his imagination.
Oh, yeah. So there's a fan theory that, at least in some of those early stories, Captain Marvel's not even there. The whole idea is that the story works the same way if you just assume Billy's saved, but the idea is that this kid has such a terrible life that he's imagining someone. Like Dean was saying earlier, you want to imagine someone who can save you from this stuff. And that's what Captain Marvel is, right? He's this ultimate, not really a power fantasy, because again, the power, he can just do whatever he needs to do. He's as strong as he needs to be. He's as fast as he needs to be. He's as smart as he needs to be. It's this idea that Billy hasn't had the best life. He doesn't have an Uncle Ben, an Aunt May, a John and Martha, even an Alfred. The superpowers give him a great, big, huge family, and even more in the modern era where he's got a bunch of adopted siblings.
He doesn't even have a Professor X to just fuck with him, but at least give him a house.
They established pretty quickly that everyone's going to be really nice to him. Like the guy who owns Wiz, Sterling Morris, gives him a job and everything. There aren't tons of stories in the Golden Age where this kid is scrounging for food or anything, but the whole idea is that he does not have a good life. So when the wizard offers him this power, it's what are you going to do with it? Are you going to treat the world the way it treated you? It's no, I'm going to try to help as many people as I can, and hopefully that'll make my life better. And spoilers, it does. But it's very much driven from this point. You're beaten down, you've lost your parents, you've lost everything else, but it didn't break who you were. And as a result, in the world you live in, you're going to be rewarded with the power to make sure that you help as many other people as you can, which is something I love.
It's very much a myth out of the Depression, too. Homeless kid, has nothing, has to keep their chin up, and hopefully eventually a better day comes. And it does. And that's something that I think a lot of people, even when this debuted, were still hoping would come. They were still hoping for that day, despite the New Deal and everything. And, of course, the Second World War right around the corner, too. So that'll take the myth in slightly different directions. But it was all about promulgating hope. And that in order to survive the Depression, there had to be a lot of hope. Just around the corner, we need a lot of hope to survive the Second World War.
Yeah, and Captain Marvel was good for that too back then and even now, because it's always like when he fights the Nazis or the fascists or whoever he's fighting, it's always like, they're not nuanced political dramas. They're the way a little kid would look at them,
yes.
Right? So I was saying before, it's like he can fight Hitler, he can fight all the bad guys, but at the end of the day, he's fighting them because they all got together and they're being controlled by a Venusian mind worm. Now, this Power of Shazam seems to be going in a different direction, but it also makes sense for the time because a lot of these characters, it's of course Talkie Tawny had to be a doll. You can't just randomly throw in a talking tiger or talking worm or something else and expect it to work.
Eventually, those guys do. It does happen. We see Mr. Mind, and eventually, obviously, we get Talkie Tawny. Yeah. What was I going to say? I had an idea and I lost it because I got to thinking about Talkie Tawny. Oh yeah, I think that's also why it doesn't work when Jeff Johns played the kid a bastard. It doesn't lend itself to that. We want to see if it's a little kid dreaming, and that's what this is supposed to be. No offense to snotty little kids, but who cares what a loud brat and fucking Target, what are they dreaming of? What I want is a good kid. I wonder what they're dreaming of. How would they see the world? How would they fix things?
Right. And I've got to remind myself.
No offense to those kids. Hopefully they all turn out to be good.
I also got to remind myself that as I talked about how meek Savannah was and the weird stuff that's going on with Black Adam here, I've got to remind myself that this is the launching point for something new, a new story that's being told with these characters. And there is plenty of opportunity later on down the road for these characters to obviously become the supervillains that I'm expecting them to be. And so, yeah, this is a good beginning. This is a good spot. This is a nice retelling. In my opinion, I enjoyed the story. It felt very much like a period piece. This was the good guy versus the bad guy. I didn't know enough about Captain Marvel prior to be making.
But you shouldn't have felt the need to read the whole wiki, right? That's why I think this is good for what it is, because you can hand this to someone even today if they've only seen the movie, and it's like, hey, take a read at this. It's a good introduction to the world.
Yeah. All right, Dean, you're up, man. What are your thoughts here?
Let me first commend the Batsons for being very dedicated to making sure that the treasures that they were excavating would wind up in Egyptian museums. There's a joke that's like, would you like to see Egypt's treasures? Yeah, all you got to do is go to the museum in London. British imperialism, and then later, for lack of a better term, mercenary barnstorming, stripped a lot of these treasures. So kudos. Why are you laughing at me?
Because I'm going to put out a bingo card one day of things that you say on this, and that's going to mercenary barnstorming. I don't know that you've ever said that phrase before. I've certainly never heard that phrase before, but I want to put that on there. It'll be that. It'll be the guy from Madison Square Garden. It'll be
Thuicity.
I remember that fucking thing. I remember that. Oh, and by the way, I now have a continuity issue with the podcasts because I have not.
The summer issue.
I was like, shit. I did too. I was like, well, I want to release the summer thing because I fucking would feel like shit if I released it in September. And now I've got like 6 episodes of the knife guy still kicking it after we killed him off in this Punisher episode that just released. So I want to have a little
footnote. One of those old editors notes like,
dude.
Note, this takes place before Unspoken Issues number 115.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Anyway, bingo card.
Anyhow, there was a problem with, you said, mercenary archaeologists who would still take these things. There's still an issue to this day. For instance, Hobby Lobby, the people behind Hobby Lobby engaged in illegal importation of artifacts from Iraq during the Second Gulf War. So this is still an issue even to this day. You run into this. So kudos to the Batsons, who were they were adamant that anything belonged to the Cairo Museum, to the Egyptian authorities. Way to go. I respect that.
I do not respect the fact that Charlie fell for the old, hey, I hit your wife for a second time. Okay, I give. You don't let up on a motherfucker after he hit your wife twice.
You got to pick up the knife at least, right? No big deal. Time to go.
Yeah, that's all right. Come on. I understand. I accept your apology. Let's leave.
Yeah. You got to at least pick up the knife. Yeah, he's kind of dumb, but
oh well.
He's a college boy.
College boy.
What an idiot. He went to college.
It's a hard lesson to learn.
The whole thing, I think there are a couple of parts, like I said, that I don't know quite come together. Why is Savannah homeless at the end? I read the ongoing about 4 years ago. And I don't remember how it starts. I don't think he's homeless to begin, though.
I had your voice in my head as I was reading that, because all I could think of was how difficult it is to really make a person who's that wealthy that poor. That would be the portion of the story that was more unbelievable than the guy who could fly and punch the moon out of his orbit.
It's so here's the apartment caught on fire. Now he's broke. Like what?
Yeah, I don't care if he ruined the World's Fair. He's got a lot more levels to fall than any other character before he's sleeping in the alley behind him.
That all seems like a scam. So now he just gets the money, right? It's the guy who bought the fucking Islanders when he didn't really have the money, but he was trying to sell naming rights to the Nassau Coliseum. And if he had just sold those, he could have used that money to pay the money that he didn't have to keep it going. He's 3 weeks away from it. I feel like that's what would have happened here. It's, oh no, they destroyed the World's Fair. I guess I'll have to claim the insurance money now. I feel like that's what was going on. The fight scenes are all great. Really sticking with the whole retro feel of Fawcett City all the way through, to the point where radio seems to be a huge deal. And even when there is a huge camera, even when there is a TV camera, it's like this old-timey TV camera, what you would see on the Billy Joel video, the big CBS camera. So I really appreciate the dedication to making you understand that Fawcett City is vintage, but not backwards, if that makes sense.
I now I really like this idea, because this is another thing that was added when DC finally pulled the trigger and bought the damn thing. Fawcett had not been a going concern for a while at that point, and they were Fawcett City, because up until then it was just New York. It was, right. It was 100% Manhattan. So I kind of do like the idea that in the post-crisis world, to go back to Dean's point of how weird the DC universe is, Fawcett City is sitting in is that the Midwest? You said it was in Minnesota? Is that the Midwest?
That would be the Midwest.
Yeah, so it's sitting in the Midwest, and it's just it's the way New York saw itself in the interwar period. And it's just this insane place. But the rest of the world is the 90s. Bill Clinton's in office. Everyone's trying to figure out how they can make money on the internet, the whole thing. I love this idea that if the other characters go there, it's just insane. I actually do think that this is touched on in the Starman crossover, because Opal City, which is the basis.
I was about to say, They do the same thing with like Opal City, and Keystone and Central City start to have. And I really think, I said, it's harder. Hub City as well. We don't talk about Hub City a whole lot, but what a cess fucking pool. That's the question. Yeah. The question is from Hub City, which is kind of East St. Louis.
Have you guys ever done the Denny O'Neil run?
Yeah, it started in '89. We haven't done any of it yet, but I do like the DC because of these fictional cities. They can become characters and add to characters. They can be part of the milieu in a way that perhaps it can be harder for them to do with the real city because Marvel's just so good at making New York a character.
Yeah. It's tough here because the Marvels are always set in whatever period of they're always set in the place outside of the window of Marvel's offices. The Marvel of today is the Marvel of today. It's where you're walking through. But that doesn't lend itself to there are buildings and there are other things that are really cool, but you couldn't pull off something like this. Whereas if you have your own enclave, you can really make it into a very interesting place. I do that. I don't think that was what he intended, but I do the idea of the mid-90s and people showing up at Fawcett and just being like, that's not how we do things here. We're special. We're a different place. And Billy having been raised there and kind of defined who he is, it kind of explains everything else. I kind of like that. It's good.
Yeah, I'm sure that you can get the internet in Fawcett City, but your modem probably looks like an old-timey microphone.
Right,
we have an aesthetic. This is what we want to do, and it attracts people, and it's a way for us to compete because who the fuck wants to go to Minnesota unless you're gonna fish or the Metronome's gone? So what else is it for? 10,000 lakes, 10,000 lakes,
and it works too, right? Because you can almost picture them having some boom in the interwar. Right. Some multi-billionaire, Mr. Banjo, showed up. He had all this money. He built these gorgeous buildings. He was like, this is it. This is going to be the greatest city to the west of the Mississippi. This is it. And then he dies, or the war takes out, or the industry dries up, whatever it is. It's happened 100 times over. And they were all just like, no, you know what? We got a good thing here. We're keeping it. We're maintaining it. This is who we are. This separates us from everyone else. It's not hurting anyone. To Dean's point, they probably all have fax machines and computers of the time, but they probably all look in this aesthetic and they're probably very proud of that. So again, it really informs who they are. And there are other Fawcett characters. He could have appeared in 1990, but to Dean's earlier point, the Spy Smasher, this Captain America Batman variant, he could have been running around in the 40s. Who knows? Maybe they got a rich superhero legacy.
He's part of that Starman crossover because part of it actually takes place during World War II. And then Bullet Man and Bullet Girl wind up a part of this. They wind up the Marvel family as well. Captain Marvel Jr., Mary Marvel. And there's even, I think, this janitor winds up becoming Uncle Dudley.
Nice. The greatest Fawcett character, I just love the name, is Mr. Scarlet. I think that's a great name for a superhero. He's a Batman knockoff. And his sidekick, instead of being Robin, is Pinky.
Mr. Scarlet and Pinky, yeah.
Mr. Scarlet and Pinky,
I think that, like, at one point, I think that's a magazine or a TV show in Fawcett City. And also, Bullet Man is a TV show at first because in issue 1 of the ongoing, Billy's racing home because he wants to. So if I get home, I'll only miss the first 5 minutes of Bullet Man.
Yeah.
I think they do a good job of integrating Billy and Captain Marvel here. That Jerry Ordway does. It's got to be this mix. I don't want it to just be Captain Marvel's totally separate, but I don't want this to be an idiot kid in this body. That's what the wisdom of Solomon's for. So it's something that Billy has to guide his way through, but it's not, he's just, I don't even know what to do. And he finds his way, and I really appreciate the good job they do on that.
Yeah. Something Ordway did that I really liked too was this was a complaint in the movie. When the movie came out, I remember people were, he's got the wisdom of Solomon. He can be very smart. And it's kind of, but wisdom isn't, I know things. Wisdom is I experienced something and I knew I made a mistake and I'm not going to do that next time. So I do like the fact that he doesn't show up on day one and he has access to all the knowledge, but he can figure out as time goes on that if he takes him, and which is very difficult to do for me as an old man. I can't imagine how difficult it is for a little kid, right? To take a second and to say, wait a second, let me think through this, and then suddenly you have access to divine inspired wisdom, and it's I know how to solve this. I know how to save everyone. I know how to do everything. So I do like that that's part of his evolution, because Captain Marvel is very much a static character. He doesn't really have much of an arc. The way he appears in Wiz Comics #2 and the way he ends in 1954, it's pretty much the same character, but that's okay. Again, I go back to the Bugs Bunny example, but one of the things the later writers have done is the wisdom of Solomon. It's like, this guy could potentially solve any problem he puts his mind to. He has that direct access to the God of knowledge, but he has to know that and he has to figure out what that means. So I always thought that was a good arc for the character to experience.
Billy brings wisdom himself. One of the things that I really like about Dungeons and Dragons is the stats separate intelligence and wisdom. One of the things they say about wisdom, the wisdom is kind of comes from two places. Either it's because you do a lot of reading and introspection, commune with yourself, greater powers, nature, etc., or you're very street smart. You have experience in things, and it's hard to get one over on you, even though you don't have a lot of facts. You're savvy and cunning. And Billy, you see, brings that as Billy, whether he has the wisdom of Solomon or not, by evidence, by a couple moments in the fight, especially when he doesn't fall for the old Loki doke the way his dad did.
Right.
So I dig that a lot. This is definitely a book that if you had picked up the hardcover at the time, yeah, you'd have been chomping at the bit for the ongoing to come out. It's a really good lead into that. It's a really good way to establish Captain Marvel in the DC universe. More for, like I said, he was in there already, but they really were trying to just do a soft reboot.
Right.
Really give him his corner. And I think they do a really good job of that.
You mentioned Jeff Johns before, and I will say I agree with you for the most part, but I did like the character on the Justice Society. I always thought that was a good...
I'm talking about the New 52.
The hooded Justice. But again,
the Justice Society, I love Captain Marvel and the Justice Society. He belongs there. He does not belong in the Justice League in my mind. Yeah. He's a guy. It's the Justice League Unlimited episode that he's on. He's too good. Superman can't keep up with this guy because he's too good. Everybody just likes him. I don't mean good like, he's better than they are, because he's not, and that infuriates Superman even more. He's just genuinely a nice guy who he wants to get along with everybody, so everybody gets along with him. And that's a little old-timey for the sometimes black ops clandestine have to do this behind the scenes. The Justice League pulls. The Justice Society is mythic, and they remind us of a time when even if everything wasn't great, we could all agree that these Nazis had to be stopped. And we can look at this this generation, and we can look at those people and the heroes they produce as an example to follow in a way that I'm not saying you can't look at Superman, but it's just a little pure. So Captain Marvel should be there. And I like him in the Justice. When Jeff Johns does in the Justice Society, it's absolutely fine. It's only later when he gets rebooted and they make him into the 13-year-old juvenile delinquent who's in reform school and stuff. That's probably a nice character, but that's not Captain Marvel.
Yeah. How great must it have been if you were an older fan going to the comic book store when that came out and being, what's Captain Marvel doing with the Justice Society? Because it's all Golden Age characters.
Right.
Suddenly canon that they're all, yeah.
He also fits that role that every now and then the JSA and the JLA, they got a butt fucking heads. Yep. And historically, before Captain Marvel, it's always Starman that they pair off with Superman. And you're like, well,
yeah.
Right. Because generationally speaking, he's the Superman of the Golden Age.
Right.
Because the Public Crusader version was a member of the Justice Society, not a very active member.
But he was.
Since that version,
they would pair him with Starman, and you're not buying that fight. I'm sorry. Starman is incredible, and it's an incredible story, an incredible character. But I'm gonna take the last set of Krypton over the gravity rod or the cosmic rod any day. Although Ted Knight, you got to be smart. If it absorbs solar radiation, figure out a way to get red sun radiation in it, right?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I absolutely think Starman under the right circumstances could take Superman out. But the other way they did that is, do you guys remember Iron Monroe?
Yes.
Oh, my God. Talk about terrible retcons.
I think that's a good name.
Very, very quickly, because I can feel people shutting the podcast off.
Nobody shuts this thing off. Let me tell you.
After they realized that there are real Justice Society of America stories from the Golden Age that featured Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, and then they wanted to reference those later, but then editorial had decided that Batman and Superman were always current. They came up with versions of those characters that would be of the Golden Age. So they came up with, instead of Superman, Iron is his first name and Monroe is his second name. He was a big, huge bruiser character who is actually based on one of the characters that Jerry Siegel based Superman on, who's in the public domain. The Batman knockoff or replacement or what have you was the Flying Fox, which I think is a type of bat, maybe the largest bat in the world. And he was a Native American character. But again, they never went anywhere. They were just there.
And
so that
Wonder Woman became the Fury, I want to say.
Or her mother.
It was in a book called Young All-Stars that nobody liked.
Yes.
That everybody hated. That even Roy Thomas, who wrote it, didn't. And I know there are actually some fans of Young All-Stars, but you read it after All-Star Squadron, and it's like if you went to Ruth Chris Steakhouse and got a really great steak, and then the next day your neighbor grilled one on the barbecue grill. It's not that it's fine, I guess, but you can't compare it.
Can't compare.
But overall, it's a fantastic. It's got a golden age feel, but it's definitely a modern story, and it springboards Power of Shazam, which is going to run into 1999, and I think it runs for about 48 issues, and it gets an annual and a 1 million issue, so it's around 50 issues, which. That's a nice long run. It's easily the longest run the character's had since the 70s. And it still to this day is probably what most people, when we talk about Captain Marvel and Shazam, sadly, there's not a ton of must-read stuff. But the 90s stuff is, well, this is probably something you should look at if you like the character. I said, read the Kingdom Come. He's very good in Justice. The Justice Society stuff. The Jeff Smith Shazam and the Monster Society of Evil is a lot of fun.
We did that one on the Source Material podcast.
And the current Mark Waid Shazam is really good, but there was a multiversity that was good too.
That's Thunderworld. I was going to say that's my favorite Captain Marvel story. Yeah.
But you're talking about years between anything that was worth reading, and so it's nice to go back to an era where they were still trying to get the character over. I don't think that I don't know what DC does now. I don't think they're trying to get anybody but Batman over. So it's a different world now. But they definitely wanted you to care about this character, and the fandom, based on what I said earlier, really wanted to care. So a very interesting confluence of events.
Yeah, and they'll never reproduce the Monster Society of Evil, unfortunately, because it's a little racist.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Racist. So.
Not Jeff Smith.
No, sorry, the original one.
Yeah. Well, I just mentioned that, so I didn't want anybody to get confused.
This story is great.
Jeff Smith is really for 7-year-olds. Honestly, this is a really great kids book. There's nothing untoward in it. The old 25-parter is decidedly, much like the Punisher Summer Special, there is some incredibly untasteful and outright racist caricatures and epithets that are utilized. Unfortunately, I said the Justice Society putting Captain Marvel in it. It was our greatest generation, but it wasn't without its flaws. And one of it was incredible racism toward people that they deemed it was okay to be racist toward. And not just Japanese people there. There were race riots in Detroit because black people still weren't being treated well here. So that when we talk about that pristine era and how everything shines, don't forget that there ain't no dark till something shines. The brighter that shines, the more I can see the dark too.
Jeff Smith's Shazam, the Monster Society of Evil, episode 216 of the Source Material Comics podcast. Me, Chris Armstrong.
Good stuff.
Yep. Me, Chris Armstrong.
It's one of those books that's obviously for 7-year-olds, but I enjoyed it when I read it at 25, and I enjoy it
It's all
now.
ages, because it's good if you're older, it's good if you're younger, but all ages doesn't mean it speaks down to you. All ages means everyone can enjoy it, you know?
The primary demographic, you can tell he really wanted to do a really good kids book that everyone could enjoy, and that's the thing. If you're looking for a book to give a kid, it's got to be top 5 for me. If you have a 10-year-old or younger who wants to get into comic books, that's a really good one to hand them. And it's really good for boys or girls too, because Mary Marvel plays a very strong role in it.
Mm-hmm. And
Mary's great from day one. Mary, she had her own adventure. She had her own pantheon. She was never just a sidekick or a partner. She was a hero in her own right. She had tons of adventures, and even today, she has her own. She very recently had her own ongoing. She was a great member of the Justice League for a time. So, the character was way ahead of his peers in many, many ways.
I have episode 333 of the Source Material Comics podcast, where I did a solo shot on Superman versus Shazam from 1978. And I don't really remember much from it.
King Kull was trying to get revenge on us human beings because our ancestors killed his Neanderthal ancestors. The big surprise is that the Neanderthal were all genius. They could do anything. So he's a big beast man, but he's as smart as Mr. Fantastic or Dr. Doom. Again, this stuff was so imaginative.
Feel in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing you were talking about, they never really, back in the day, talked down with Mary Marvel, and I think Jerry Ordway does a great job with this too, is it wasn't until really the advent of the code that the idea was that girls didn't read comics.
Yeah,
if you go back and read a lot of, even in the Silver Age, a lot of the house ads are, hey, fellas, get your mom to give you a dime. But if you go to the Golden Age, it's all boys and girls. They really thought that. And then they also, that demographic would grow. One of the things we don't talk about the romance genre is pre-code. It was racy.
Oh,
awesome.
yeah.
And some really good stuff. But once the code came in, there were still romance comics. And while some of them were still good, especially the John Romita drawn stuff, and especially the 70s romance covers are just, real for DC. At the same time, the Harlequin romances and bodice rippers start to get more popular. So if you want to read something racy, you're 13, 14-year-old young lady and you're trying to grow up, well, this is just kid shit, and they keep reprinting the same stories anyway in the DC and Charlton romances with new fucking outfits. And so between all that, they lost the girls, and then they acted girls in the comics. But Power of Shazam, great graphic novel.
Indeed. We got it done. Okay, we didn't get it done.
Didn't get anything done.
Nope, we had no idea what we just talked about.
Okay, Jesse.
Dean.
How much would you pay for a Captain Marvel Cyberforce crossover? Would you pay $19.99 for a hardcover?
Oh, for a hardcover? Yes, absolutely. 100%. I don't know what the plot would be.
It'd just be Captain Marvel kicking the shit out of them. I already told you.
No, they can't. Okay,
94 pages of Captain Marvel just owning Heatwave. I would probably have Dr. Sivana buy Cyberdata and go from there.
It's a great idea.
There is a lot of overlap here. I'm seeing it. I think Mark's
program Mr. Adam into the Shock Troop.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's got a lot of tech foes.
Maybe you could tie Bullet Man into it, Bullet Man and Bullet Girl, and be like, oh yeah, they were blah,
because the whole thing is that he's an early Hank Pym. He makes his own superpowers in a lab, and then he gives them to his girlfriend. So yeah, he absolutely could have worked for Cyberdata.
Tech or something.
Go.
Yeah. No, I love making up crossovers. So that one's easier than it seems on the surface. Oh, you can put Mr. Mind in a big old cyber suit. That'd be great.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, we all know that Deathmate was on the table at one point, and they almost said no because we got to do this crossover with Captain Marvel and the rest of the game.
Right, of course. Mark Silvestri was on the phone with Mike Carlin. Mike Carlin said, we signed the papers. No, it's not.
Thundermate. No, I'm afraid not.
Has another phone in his other hand. He's Deathmate's still on, right? Okay. Mike, I'll call you later. Picks up the phone.
Damn it. What could have been?
Jesse, what did you think?
I hear a lot of people talking good about this book. They really, maybe, I don't know about this book. Maybe they're talking about the series itself. Just like you said, it had a long run. Obviously, there were some buyers out there or wouldn't have lasted as long as it did. It looks Ordway stayed on the book all the way up to issue 47. And I don't know if that's the last one. No, it is not. Because after that, Eric Wallace takes over the book. Hold on. Let me stop.
Okay.
All right. Because 47 was the last issue. So it went to 47 issues total. So Ordway's on it all the way. It goes to an issue 48, but can you guess how they get that issue 48?
It's a 1 million issue.
Blackest Night.
Oh, yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I said Eric Wallace, what the fuck? Yeah, so...
Yeah, I knew Jerry Ordway was on the whole run. He never left the book.
Right. So, anyway, yeah, I had a good time. Yeah, as far as enjoying Shazam, there was nothing in here. And in Captain Marvel, there's nothing in here that made me go, why did I waste my time? I had a good time. So it's good old, as I think the guys from iFanboy put it, it's good old superheroes. So there you go. That's what it felt like to me. All right.
Here.
Okay. So speaking of podcasts and superheroes and all that fun stuff, let's get into plugs here. So Dean, you got some stuff going on over there at the UnspokenDecade.com and the Facebook page. What's going on?
I'm posting a lot more reels, so that's a lot of fun. And over on the website, We do have, right now, we're semi-fans still writing about the Silver Surfer Herald ordeal. So that's a lot of fun, too. So check us out over there. Google us or theunspokendecade.com. Search for us on Facebook. And I'll probably post something on Blue Sky again someday. So watch out.
Right now, this will most likely, the results of this will be happening by the time this airs, because we got plenty of stuff that might be ahead of this. But there's a poll going on right now between where Evan Bevins said, hey, let's pit Mark Miller and Grant Morrison, a book that each of them did, one from DC and one from Marvel. So we chose Aztec the Ultimate Man, #1, up against Skrull Kill Crew, #1. And as of right now, I don't think much is going to change. There's 34 votes, and Aztec the Ultimate Man is running away with this thing with 80% of the vote. So I don't know much about Skrull Kill Crew, but it seems
you should read Emily Scott's article on the website.
Okay, all right. There you go.
She read it.
It's good. I don't understand why people must really, really respect Aztec.
Aztec is much better.
There's your answer.
I mean,
all right.
It's the difference between a really well done character blockbuster and a really neat, schlocky grindhouse movie.
Grindhouse movie? Okay, yeah, that's perfect. Well, anyway, most likely at some point you'll be hearing us talk about Aztec the Ultimate Man, unless something really changes in regards to this poll. So with that being said, the Source Material Comics Podcast, where we talk about comics of any era. I've already plugged our previous shows there with Shazam. Currently, I think Mark and I just finished. We finished up Lois Lane. That's right. Darry's been waiting to hear all about Lois Lane.
Oh, yeah, he needs Greg Rucka, too.
Oh, man.
So that just finished. I don't know what's next on the block for source material here. Yeah, just keep an eye out for that. Anyway, Unspoken Issues. Look, we got over 100 episodes. Our most recent episode, we talked a little bit about it. The Punisher Summer Special just aired today as we're recording. Go check that out. It was a good discussion. I had a lot of fun and learned a lot. And we got to talk about the Punisher. It was fun. So
yeah, and if you want any comics, you buy them from sbcomics.com. You go to Matthew Price, and Annette Price's Speedy Bullet Comics in Norman, Oklahoma. Celebrating 26 years. A lot of great things going on there. Check them out. They'll be happy to help you. And don't forget, the $2 million for any issue of Supreme deal continues. If you want any issue of Supreme, they'll get it for you for $2 million. Or if you just want an issue of Supreme that they already have, they'll sell it to you for less. It's weird.
That's right.
But if you ask them, if you have $2 million and I want an issue of Supreme, any issue, they'll
find it. They will find it. It's good stuff. All right. Yeah, we respect his contributions here for the Unspoken Issues podcast as well. I love having Matthew Price on here. We talked Cyberforce last time. Opposing Forces, which hasn't aired yet.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out.
Cyberforce and Strike Force.
That's right. Opposing Forces.
Jesse's head almost blew up like it was fucking scanners.
The podcast just about didn't happen. It was crazy. All right, we're out of here. That over there is Darry Weight. That down there is Dean Compton. I'm Jesse Starcher. It's the truth. We're out of here. Have a good one. Bye. Bye.